This is Tel Aviv. This is going to be one of the last times I drive my car. Well, I don't actually have the date yet, but probably within the next 2 weeks I will be getting rid of my electric car that I'm driving now. This is a Renault Fluence ZE, a Renault car. It's 5 years old. I got it 5 years ago. I've done just over 60,000 kilometers. Turned past 60,000 last night. It's pretty quiet. It goes fast. It accelerates beautifully. And if it weren't for the battery, I would probably keep it for at least another couple of years. It's very cheap to service. There's really very little that can go wrong in it. Oh, camera's falling over. It's drives beautifully. The problem I have is that I can only do about 80 kilometers with it right now. When it was designed and sold, it was told to us that they would go about 160. That was never really the case. When it was brand new, it could go about 140 kilometers on a single charge. And then when it goes, right now, after 5 years of the battery basically getting worse, I would comfortably do 80 kilometers. It might scrape 90, I'm not sure. I haven't really pushed it to the max. So I have to get rid of it because Renault don't want to bring any more batteries into the country. Basically, they want to pay us to get them off the road. So they've made us an offer and I'm going to turn it in for a cash payment. And that's it. I'm a bit sad really because I've enjoyed driving an EV for 5 years. For the first 2 years, we had a system in Israel called Better Place, which swapped batteries. So I could drive pretty much anywhere in the country, and there was a network of around 40 switch stations. If you haven't been following me this long, I could drive into one of those switch stations, and it was like a giant car wash, except that instead of washing the car, it grabbed hold of your car, dragged you through it, and it took out the battery that was depleted and put in a new one. And this isn't like changing batteries in your well, I don't know, in some kind of toy, because the battery in this car weighs 230 kilograms and it takes up most of the space behind the rear seats. So it drops out of the bottom of the car. There were these machines, these robot stations, that would unscrew 4 screws and then pull the battery down out of the car, take it away inside, charge up that battery and slap a new fully charged one in. And by that method you could go pretty much anywhere in the country. And the entire process of switching batteries took about 5 minutes. It was easy, quick, painless. And then most of the time though, if you were just driving, you know, upwards of 100, 120 kilometers a day, you would charge the car at home. So 3 years ago, when the company Better Place folded in what is still the largest bankruptcy in modern Israeli history, that network stopped working, and since then I've just been able to charge my car at home. So at the parking garage at my house that I'm driving towards now, I have a box which Better Place supplied, and with a plug, every night I plug the car in, and by that method, since the switch stations went away, I've driven the car almost every day, and for driving around Tel Aviv and to and from my office, the car is absolutely perfect for my needs. But it is limited. I cannot drive to Jerusalem or Haifa or anything else, and if I'm going to do like a multi-stop day, I have to think a little bit about whether the car can make it. So driving to my parents, driving to the office, the combinations, it lowers your flexibility, and that's a problem. So it is with some sadness that I will be handing this car back to Renault. The drop dead date for me is May 13th, I think, because that's when the year's license is renewed, and I'm not going to renew this car for another year, that's for sure. So I'll be handing it back. I'm looking at a few cars, haven't really decided. There's a Hyundai Ioniq hybrid that I quite like driving. Renault, I get extra money if I buy another Renault, but there's not much in the Renault range that's exciting for me, so I'm not in the market to spend hundreds of thousands of shekels on something interesting or fast. So I'll have to get rid of this, and I know that there's nothing that I'm going to buy that's going to feel as fast as this. Pulling away from traffic lights, this car is one of the fastest things I've ever owned, and I've owned sports cars in England. I used to drive an MGF. The electric motor and the instancy of power, the way it accelerates when you put your foot down, there's a snap to the way power comes that no other car beats. Especially today's modern, in Israel, they bring a lot of these cars with very, very tiny engines, 1.2 and 1.6 litre engines with turbochargers. And the turbochargers, even though they try to avoid it, they have a lag. So you put the foot down and there's this gap between something happening. In this car, as soon as I push my foot down, the car is moving already. It's as the pedal is traveling down, it's getting faster. And the other part I like is right now I'm slowing towards an exit for the motorway. I'm not going to use the brakes. I'm doing 90 kilometers an hour right now. As I get towards the ramp, the off ramp that's going up, I'm just going to lift my foot off the accelerator. Already I'm now off the accelerator. The car is already slowing down even too much. I'm going to put my foot back on the accelerator because there's a hill coming up. I'm going to make it to the traffic lights, and I'm going to make it to a stop without using the brakes. That's also one of the reasons why I've done 60,000 kilometers and I haven't changed the brakes on this car, which is pretty unusual. 5 years old brakes. So we're just rolling to a stop now. Again, my foot is still slightly on the accelerator to keep me pulling up to the car in front. And only when I get to it, okay, right about now, I'm on the brakes and we stop. That doesn't happen in normal cars because this car is using the electric motor and the battery as the energy store into which the energy of while you were traveling, it's put straight back into the battery. And that also used to be one of the reasons why when I could drive to Jerusalem and switch batteries there, the drive to Jerusalem used like 35 or 40% more electricity than the drive home, because the drive home was all downhill. In all the downhill bits, you were just harvesting electricity. You were actually taking the speed of the car and turning that into electricity as you went down the hill. Potential energy converted into chemical energy stored in a battery, as any junior physics undergraduate would know. So yeah, I'm just enjoying the quiet. There's nothing like electric, and I'm pretty certain that 5 to 10 years out there will be increasing numbers of electric cars. In Israel, almost nothing. Renault have made a stupid decision. So they have an electric car that replaced this one, a smaller car, sort of more like the Clio, called the Zoe. And they've been selling the Zoe in Europe for 3 or 4 years with the same battery that's in this car, which is rated at something called 22 kilowatts. But they just came out with a 44 or 42 kilowatt hour battery. Doubles the battery, gives it a range easily 300 kilometers, which would be fantastic. And the stupid Renault importer is importing the old model, the one with the small battery, because they're just too cheap. So they've picked up all these ones that are not being sold in Europe anymore because of the new model, and they're trying to stuff those into the Israeli market. Ridiculous. Idiots. No way. If Tesla was here, I would consider that, though it would probably be too pricey for me. The Tesla Model S has a battery 4 times the size that this one did, and at pretty much 4 times the price. By the time the Israeli taxes would get stuck into that, it would be huge as well. But I drove the Tesla Model S on an impossibly cold day in Manhattan, minus 7 or 8 degrees Celsius, which is bad for electric cars, but nevertheless that thing was a rocket. But I have to say, when I came back to Israel and got back in my crappy little Renault built on a production line in Turkey and literally a quarter the cost of a Tesla Model S, this car feels to drive about 80% as good as a Tesla Model S. And that's all down to the removal of the engine from the front, not having a petrol engine shaking and rattling and making a hell of a lot of noise at the front of the car. That removes what in technical terms the car people call noise, vibration and harshness, NVH. They use this in helicopters and planes and stuff. This combined metric of NVH, noise, vibration, harshness, they are together the things that make a car either pleasant or unpleasant to be in. The more noise, vibration and harshness, the less you like the car. And the big difference, if you really want to know, between a Mercedes S-Class, a big beautiful car costing hundreds of thousands of whatever your currency is, and a Hyundai, say, the big difference is in the amount of care and attention they can afford to put into clamping down on noise, vibration and harshness. Now, as soon as you stop having a petrol or a diesel engine at the front that's just vibrating and making noise and heat all the time, you've immediately cut down the noise, vibration and harshness. So your badly produced or cheaply made electric car can suddenly start to compete with some luxury brands, and that's a pretty impressive thing. Anyway, I'm gonna have to say goodbye because I have to open my garage door, and that means using my phone. So for one of the last times in my electric car, bye bye.